Good afternoon on what is a mild, bright and sunny day. It is Tuesday the 14th of February and I'm in the Nook with a nice hot cup of tea. And big thick parcel to unbox. This has come from drive-through. Got, and it's very well glued down. And what I've got here is this, which massive tome is a copy of Manifold, a multiverse of tabletop role-playing by Simon Burley. Great tabletop role-playing game sessions grow out of 8 things. Players, Manifold has a seductive range of options to encourage players' imagination and creativity. It's a game full of twists and turns, but these are allocated via die rolls. Quieter or new players are encouraged to participate, whilst the more experienced don't get to dominate. The referee, they openly get the same die roll granted options as the players, so they can let loose their own imagination without any worries or about unfairness. The genre, this book contains enough rules to get you playing in 4 different genres: horror, superhero, science fiction and fantasy. The setting, each genre is supported by an introduction to a unique but stereotypical setting: Dark Forces, New London, the Empire of Man and Arestia. The scenario, each setting has fully detailed starting scenario: dark, disturbing psychological horror, an old generation of superheroes gone rogue, waking up from cryo-sleep on a clapped-out space hauler in the middle of a space battle, wrestling a caravan of treasures and secrets through a deadly jungle. The characters, you can make anything from a dotty old spinster detective to a goddess who can move planets using the same systems. The game system, Manifold, is a medium complexity game, lacking detailed number crunching but enough moving parts to keep things moving. Yes. The randomizing vector, this is set high, just 2 6-sided dice, but multiplied to give a swingy range of outcomes. Call it cinematic, call it gonzo, call it fun. Manifold is a high-octane game of action, twists and plot reversals, no matter which genre you choose to play in. And that's just the start. You're free to use these rules to create and publish your own settings and scenarios. It's easy and fun. Join the growing Manifold community. So quite a blurb there. And quite a sort of like interesting kind of swirly sort of like cover there. You know, sort of like as if they've come from all kind of the same source, or reaching out to the multiverse sort of thing, with sort of 4 different archetypes on the front. Now, this is written and designed by Simon Burley. Now, Simon Burley may well be best known in the gaming hobby as the co-author, along with Peter Haynes, of the classic superhero role-playing game Golden Heroes, published by Games Workshop in 1985, who has returned to the superhero genre again and again, but without having the same kind of impact. And essentially, he wanted to resurrect Golden Heroes, wasn't able to. In the definitely in the tweenies up until the pandemic, he's best known certainly in the UK gaming community for running convention. Basically running games at convention after convention, science fiction conventions, role-playing conventions. He would literally pop out almost every weekend up and down the country. He's even written a little book about it, which I have reviewed. And in addition, he helped me set up Spaghetti Conjunction, the Birmingham twice a year convention that I was running before. We were running before the pandemic. Unfortunately, we don't have a venue for it anymore, and he's been a bit quiet since. But what's he been doing? It's Manifold, this enormous tome. So, because this is 500 pages long, but you can see it's big and it's open, and it's not, it could have been probably much shorter, but he's kept it, easy to grasp, easy off the page. This is what he's been designing. You might want to call it his Magnus Opus, if you will. So so Manifold is a multi-genre tabletop role-playing game, we've got an introduction explaining what the role-playing game is, what it's about. Go through the basic various elements, and he's also so yeah, there we go. There's a self-portrait of Simon, or basic portrait of Simon. So what we've got, how to use his books. It was actually a guide to that. Choose a setting, decide who's going to be referee, make characters, read the other rules, and deal with this referee's secret stuff. You know, things like, the inside scoop on the 4 settings, scenarios, adventures, referee-specific advice, and so on. Details on how the game can be adapted to play other genres or settings. And that's really it. And then, so that's the introduction. And then automatically, chapter 2, we are into Dark Forces, which is the horror setting, a world of contemporary horror. And it's almost, I think, you've got the feeling that these are not just, there's not just one role-playing game in here. There's 4 role-playing games in here. We have, you can see, here's what the role-playing game looks like. This is an explanation of the stats. That's really kind of simple and direct. You can see it. Okay, here's what they are, and they're big, bold, and easy to read. And the things we have, abilities, essentially skills. So you've got a list of skills you can use at close range and then at ranged. So you can see that. So you have things like your bottles, bricks and stones, catapult, crossbow, improvised weapons, lobbering, whatever comes to hand, pistol, rifle, throwing stuff, and so on. So they are kind of laid out like that. And then you've got stuff for like careers, and then essentially we've got an example of character generation. There. And essentially the process, character creation, take you through step by step through the process. And then we get on to abilities. So far we get on to skills, so quite detailed, just laid out like that, clearly presented, written up, almost as if written up for somebody who needs larger print. And there's also rules in here for random character creation. And then we have the sort of kind of like the final character there, I think. And we've got several samples of those. And then, so that's character creation for that section, for the Dark Forces section, and then it does kind of the same thing for New London, and you sort of like all the 4-colour superheroes, which is sort of like Simon's kind of favourite, I think. Although he does like adapting sort of like a lot of like TV and stuff with his other role-playing games. So we have. Again, very similar abilities. Looking at things like the origins. and here you have further examples of how to create the character. So we've got Carol making a character. I believe obviously that's his wife. I don't believe that Carol's a gamer. So yeah, but sorry, a bit of a sun there on me. So, you know, and then we get into, we've got things like combat superpowers. Options for, you know, environmental elements and so on, you know, survival powers, flight, hybrid sensors, and you know, these all are all sort of different abilities. You know, so essentially these are power tables for them, and you would think that normally, you know, you might do, here's my superpower role-playing game, here's my horror role-playing game, but no, he's got, you know, all four of them. So, you know, we are continuing and just the same process again, essentially taking the characters through the different phases for character creation. So let's flip on to the Empire of Man. And this is a gritty space opera on the edge of known space. So you've got a bit more background here as well. You know, you've got to explain some of the background, and you've got different species. And then we're into character creation using the same process. And again, lots of really kind of nice pulpy artwork here for, you know, science fiction pulp action. And then we come on to, let's have a look. So, you know, just the same process. You're going through, you're looking at different steps of the character creation, having an idea of how they work. And then we have Arestia, a world of swords and sorcery. And each of these sections comes with you know, a complete guide, you know, step-by-step creation process on the back on the last section. And again, you're doing the same kind of thing with the fantasy setting of Arestia. So, you know, just very similar kind of setup for each section. So I'm going to flip on to past the, because you've got simple guides to character creation all the way through, and then it's not until page 261 you're going to get ask the question, how do you play the game? You know, and then you've got an example of play there, so it's showing you that conversation, because ultimately a role-playing game is a conversation. And then we have the game system, explained here with examples. And quite a lot of examples, actually quite extensive examples of play throughout. I mean, these aren't, the one thing is essentially this is, yes, it's a wall of text, but it's quite an open wall of text. So, you know, constant examples of play throughout. So that, I mean, that's really helpful. It's one of the things you sort of, you know, show us how it plays, don't just tell us. And then we get into summary of the base system, then we get into combat. So examples dealing with running combat, narrative combat, making it exciting, and then this is again very quickly followed up with an example. So this book looks intimidating. You look at it like that. It's a big, thick book. It's not actually that intimidating. There's a lot to it, but again, it's the layout and the style. Very clean, very open. Lots of examples that really help you grasp what's going on here. So that's dealing with conflicts. Let's see what else we've got in here. And then we've got the section on character growth. It's a nice piece of artwork there. Advice, that's quite short. Before we get advice, referee advice. Dealing with things like opponents. Monsters, high-level opponents. So we're talking villains and bosses, so on, and even all the way up to sort of like Gargantua. Possibly kaiju and that sort of thing. And then we have example scenario, Door in the Dark for Dark Forces. Referee's notes. Then we have the same for New London, superhero setting. And then for the Empire of Man. And lastly for Arestia. So complete with everything you need to play, and then you've got some designer notes at the back here, and bit of some background as to who Simon is, and you've got a picture there of Squadron UK, which was Simon's sequel to Golden Heroes. I've done a review of that sometime back, and that's how I met him, writing the review of Squadron UK. You've got the comics code where it's a whole stack of different mini adventures which he really took onto around numerous conventions up and down the country. A little bit more background and so on, just talking about general systems. So there's a nice introduction of background to the game, and who he is, which I really kind of like. And then you've got at the back, you do have a license there, basically, so you can just take away and develop your own games under the terms of this very, very light license. So yeah, that's Manifold, a multiverse of tabletop role-playing games, published and written and published by Simon Burley. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this unboxing in the Nook. If you have, then please do click on the like button down below. And of course, if you've got any comments or feedback, I do appreciate you taking the time to post those. And lastly, if you want to be alerted to yet more unboxings in the Nook, where you see me out here with a box from which I will unbox a book or game, in this case a role-playing game, and talk about it to the best extent of my knowledge for roughly 10 minutes or so, all of course accompanied by a nice hot cup of tea, then please do hit the subscribe button down below. In the meantime, thanks again for watching another unboxing in the Nook. Be back again with another one. Bye for now.